guys, good morning. Welcome back to the another concept in evolution. In this part, I am going to introduce about adaptive radiation. In last classes, you have learned about what are adaptations. Through that, how organisms are acquired the characters and passed to the next generations through the genes. But what is adaptive radiation? Here, two different words are there. First one is adaptive. Adaptive means what? Acquiring characters according to the changes occurs in their circumstances. Radiation means what? Radiation means what? Nothing but distribution. So the characters they are adapted with, they are distributed to different places and they may be converged or they may be diverse. So that through the adaptive radiation, divergent evolution is also happening and convergent evolution is also happening. In this class, you will be cleared by the differences between adaptive radiation with divergent evolution, adaptive radiation with convergent evolution. Let me start. First of all, for this, there is a common ancestor is present. Common ancestor. This common ancestor have a stable characteristics. When a problem or calamity, maybe by the nature or by the same kind of a predators or same kind of a species has come according to the natural selection, that is a struggle for existence by the competitors, nothing but intra-species or environment, then they are implemented their characters to start the acquiring from the environment. So from the common ancestor, different species will come. So species A, species B, species C and species D. So if you think the common species is X. So unless a problem comes, the common ancestor cannot radiate. Radiate means what? They nothing but distribute. How the sun rays are distributed. That is why it is called sun radiation. Just like. So the species are coming through the radiation after some adaptations. For this, I will give you an example. That is Darwin finches. Darwin finches. So, once upon a time, the Darwin, who was the natural scientist, he went to a Galapagos Islands, which are very closer to the South America. In a beagle is a ship, what he used for the scientific research. When he met Galapagos Islands, first he observed and surprised by a dark color finch birds. They are simply called finch birds. After invention, they are called Darwin finches. So when he observed the Darwin finches, there was a beak like this. Birds are observed, they are commonly seed eaters. Seed eaters. So all these birds are having a beak like that and use it to pick up the seeds from the ground. So we have to think this is a common ancestor. Common ancestor. Whenever that is a Galapagos Island, a limited resources, then definitely reproduction capacity will be generally there in the organisms. They produce the number of species over the generations. Then what will happen when prodigality increases? What comes? Competition occurs. Nothing but imbalance occurs between the food sources and the organisms. Then they have to adopt. But already they are committed to eat the seeds is the original species. Later, some species are turned to leaf eaters. Some are turned to bark eaters. Some are turned to insectivorous. Insectivorous means they eat insects. And some are turned to fruitivorous. Nothing but eating fruits. Fruitivorous. So, they are sharing their food? Not. They are turns their habit into different. So, original species is seed eater, whereas leaf eater, they have a beak like this. To catch up the leaves, beak should be sharpened so that according to their habits, beak shape is changed. It is inherited in their genes, right? Then next, if it is the bark eater, they have to pin the bark of the stem so that it will be very sharp. This is curvy beak and this is sharp beak. The sharp beak finch birds are evolved from seed eaters, original species, whereas leaf eating finches also coming from seed eaters. Now if you see the fruitivorous, from the fruitivorous it should be very sharp as well as broad. So that sharp and broad beak finches are also evolved from the seed eaters. Whereas insectivorous, nothing but the non-vegetarians. So for vegetarians, non-vegetarians, new species are also evolved. For this, there should be very sharp and powerful. Why? Because it has to pick up the meat, skin like things. Okay, so that is insectivorous, insect eating finches are evolved. So that sharp and long beak has been formed by this. So here, if you see how this X provided A, B, C, and D, just like that, the seed eaters are provided more than 10 different types of food habits of the new species. So that is why the Darwin was shocked. All are finch birds, but with different beaks. Why all finches do not have the same type of beak? Because the beak of the original finches is a seed eater, but from that some adaptations happen due to the problem. So that different types of beaks having finch birds are evolved by natural selection. If they are not adapted, severe fight will happen in the same species and few will die. Understand? So this is what adaptive radiation. This adaptive radiation is divergent. Divergent adaptive radiation. Very important to understand the difference between divergent and convergent in this class. Adaptive radiations are two types: adaptive diverse, adaptive converse. Darwin finches are the best example for adaptive diverse. Why? Because they are adapted and diverted, understand, into the new species. So divergent happened because of the adaptation, but in the same area, not in different area. So that is what divergent adaptive radiation. Adaptive radiation will explain species will adopt the characters according to the changes occurs in the environment, but in the same geographical area the new species will be formed. That is adaptive radiation. Another example for adaptive radiation I can give, that is Australian marsupials. Australian marsupials. Australian marsupials is a second example and a divergent evolution or the divergent adaptive radiation. In that, what is the meaning of marsupial? Pouched mammal, just like kangaroo. So kangaroo is the national animal of Australia. The specification is it has a pouch that doesn't have a true placenta. That's why it is called prototherian. Sorry, metatherian. Understand? In the mammals, prototherians, metatherians, and eutherians will be the. Prototherians means egg-laying mammals, just like duck-billed platypus, Ornithorhynchus. Second one is pouch-having mammals. They have a pouch in that babies will be developed. So they are called marsupials, who are found in Australia first. From that, so many marsupials has been diverted by the adaptations. So that just like finch birds, Australian marsupials are also evolved in the same area by adaptations. They are divergent. So this adaptation is called adaptive divergent evolution. For the adaptive divergent radiation, two examples are there. First example is Darwin finches and second example is Australian marsupials. Then let us see what is what is adaptive convergent evolution or convergent radiation. Apart from the adaptive divergent radiation, there was adaptive convergent radiation. Let us see what is adaptive converge or adaptive converge radiation. More than one adaptive radiation, you can call up adaptive radiation is AR, short form. So one adaptive radiation takes place in the same geographical area without any isolation. Isolation means what? No separation. That is called divergent evolution. But whereas in the convergent evolution, more than one adaptive radiation taken place that appear to have occurred in an isolated. This is so important when we call adaptive converge. So in adaptive converge, what is happening? Isolation of geographical area means different habitats. So different places. Whereas in the divergent evolution in the same geographical area, convergent evolution takes place in different geographical area. There also adaptive radiation takes place. Here more than one adaptive radiation takes place. If you want a better understanding, let me give you an example. So placental mammals, already I told you the example, that is a placental mammal example for adaptive radiation, that is adaptive divergent. But here also placental mammals in Australia comes under the example, but in a special case. What is that? They also exhibit adaptive radiation in evolving into the varieties of them. That is called parallel evaluation. So one is forming in a place at the same time, another one is also arising in different geographical area. Placental wolf becomes Tasmanian wolf. Mouse and marsupial mouse. Mole and marsupial mole. This is how different types of species are happening in two different geographical areas or isolated areas. I hope you understand the difference between adaptive diverge and adaptive converge. Regarding this, one visual I am going to place in front of you. Just listen carefully and write the points. Later, biological evolution I will initiate.
During his long expedition on the HMS Beagle, Charles Darwin carried out several interesting studies on the geology of different places. One of the observations crucial to his theory of evolution was made by him on the Galapagos Islands, which are near the equator in the Pacific Ocean. The Galapagos is an archipelago of volcanic islands with varied wildlife. What amazed Darwin most was the extensive variety of finches on these islands. These species of finches differed from each other with respect to the shape of their beaks and their overall size. Darwin observed that all these species had evolved on these islands. These finches, also known as Darwin's finches, demonstrated the concept of adaptive radiation. It is a type of evolution in which species in the same geographic area, derived from a common ancestor, successfully adapt themselves to their natural environment due to natural selection. Adaptive radiation is of two types: adaptive divergence and adaptive convergence. In adaptive divergence, animals of the same or closely related group exhibit great divergence in their morphology when found in a different habitat. For example, the finches of the Galapagos Islands. These finches had originally come from the South American mainland to the Galapagos Islands. With the passage of time, they multiplied and began to compete with each other for food. As a result, all the food resources on the islands were used to the optimum. To take advantage of all the available food sources on the islands, the finches adapted themselves to the different varieties of food. One observable trait that pointed to this adaptation was the altered beaks of different species of finches. Their beaks divided them into specialized insectivorous and vegetarian varieties, respectively. Another type of adaptive radiation is adaptive convergence, where animals of unrelated groups occupying the same habitat exhibit common features. For example, Australian marsupials such as the kangaroo, marsupial rat, banded anteater, tiger cat, Tasmanian wolf, and koala. Marsupial mammals are characterized by their pouch in which the female carries the young through the initial days of infancy. Many different types of marsupials with different ancestry have evolved on the continent of Australia. This type of evolution, where several adaptive radiations have occurred in an isolated geographical area with several habitats, is known as convergent evolution. On tracing the evolution of these marsupials, it was found that the drifting of the continents had shaped their history. When the ancient land masses of Laurasia and Gondwana broke apart to form separate continents, the marsupials were also divided into two groups. While one group of marsupials was isolated on the Australian island, the other group remained in South America. Thereafter, the marsupials on both these continents evolved in a parallel manner, and hence this is also known as parallel evolution. Interestingly, on comparing marsupials and placental mammals of Australia, we find similar adaptive radiations between them. Although they have separate lineages, they resemble each other physically. Studies show that the impelling causes of adaptive radiation are the need for food, safety, and for better breeding grounds. Thus, the process of adaptive radiation illustrates how life forms have modified and evolved into new forms. 1859, when Charles Darwin's influential book On the Origin of Species by Natural Selection was published, it took the world by storm. Suddenly, the theory about the creation of life, which till then was only understood in religious terms, found a new explanation. According to Darwinian theory, natural selection is the most vital concept in evolution. For example, Darwin's studies showed that finches in the Galapagos Islands had survived by adapting to different habitats. This adaptation was evident from the altered beaks of different species of finches on the same island. He believed that the process of natural selection allows organisms to inherit traits from previous generations. These traits help them adapt themselves to their current environment and increase their chances of survival as they reproduce more successfully than others. Evolution using natural selection probably began on Earth with the origin of various cellular life forms with different metabolic capabilities. Darwin believed that the rate at which new life forms appeared was linked with their lifespan. For example, consider that a colony of bacteria called B is growing in a certain environment. In case the environment of this bacterial colony is changed, there will be some bacteria, say B1, who will be able to adapt and survive under the new conditions. In a matter of a few hours, this variant population will breed further, pass on their new traits, and establish themselves as a completely new species. In the case of the bacteria, the variant bacterial population B1 had greater fitness to adapt itself to the new environment than the original bacterial colony. This ability to adapt itself lies in the genes of an organism and is inherited. Darwin also put forth the concept of branching descent, which explained that various species have evolved from common ancestors by adapting themselves differently. However, this rate of change may have varied across species. In this way, Darwin refuted the old theory of evolution by the use and disuse of organs propounded by French naturalist Jean-Baptiste Lamarck. Lamarck had conjectured that giraffes had adapted themselves and elongated their necks while trying to eat the leaves of tall trees. Over millions of years, giraffes had made optimum use of their necks and passed on the character of a long neck to future generations. Consequently, giraffes developed long necks over millions of years. However, Lamarck's theory about the use and disuse of organs is not accepted anymore. Evolution has always generated a lot of debate. In fact, no one has been able to say with certainty whether evolution is a process or an outcome of a process like natural selection. Around the time when Darwin proposed the theory of evolution, a British scholar and economist, Thomas Malthus, propounded his influential theories about population and the factors that lead to its increase and decrease. Malthus's thoughts impacted Darwin, and he concluded that natural selection in population was also based on certain facts. For example, natural resources are limited. The size of populations is generally stable except for seasonal fluctuations such as natural disasters, and that there is variation in the characteristics of members of the same population even if they look similar. These variations are inherited. Darwin observed that exponential growth of population due to maximum reproduction or overproduction is possible in animals such as microbes. However, the population growth of organisms is limited because they compete with each other for natural resources. For example, a rise in the fish population of a river will lead to subsequent competition among them for resources. Therefore, organisms who adapt themselves and compete fiercely will survive, while the weaker ones will perish. Supporting his natural selection theory, Darwin pointed out that it was the inherited variations in organisms that helped them adapt to natural resources to the maximum and survive. These organisms, who adapted themselves better to their environment, reproduced more. After millions of years, their progeny brought about a change in population characteristic, and that's how new forms of life came into existence. Scholars have often wondered how the Darwinian concept of variation through inheritance actually occurred. Although Gregor Johann Mendel, the founder of genetics, pointed out that inheritable factors influenced genotypes, Darwin chose to remain silent on this subject. At the beginning of the 20th century, Hugo de Vries, a Dutch botanist and geneticist, based his study on the evening primrose and founded the idea of mutation. De Vries believed that it was sudden mutations in populations that brought about evolution. In fact, De Vries argued that mutations were random and directionless. Mutation caused speciation, and therefore it was called saltation or a single-step large mutation. In the years that followed, the study of genetics became more specialized and provided several new insights into evolution.
Okay guys, another small concept about this already in the last couple of sections we had discussed. But there was a need to monitor again about the biological evolution. What is a biological evolution? Whenever an organism is standardly living in a particular place or habitat, suddenly if you change the organism into different, then many of them will die and few will survive, and later the survived ones multiply themselves by the adaptations, then new species were formed. That is called biological evolution. Biological evolution is nothing but when we change the habitat of a particular species, some of them cannot adapt, they will be eliminated, and some who are adapted the characters in the new place, all the environmental changes, then they will survive. Survived ones become increase their number, multiplication by reproduction, then settle as new species as. So that is called biological evolution. For this imaginary example I will give you. Suppose here the species A were there. They are living in the soil. Just think these are the A bacteria. A bacteria. All these A type of bacteria are living in soil. So their habitat is soil. So they are comfortably living in the soil. When you shift this bacteria into the another new different habit, nothing but in water. Water is different habitat for them, right? Different habitat for this type of bacteria. So here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 years you were shifted from soil to water. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10. So when you shift immediately, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 were died due to the unfavorable conditions. So they are very comfortably living as their habitat is soil. When we shifted all the 10 in the water, 7 were died and 3 were survived. So they are survived species. These, why they are survived? Because they are adapted the characters to even live in the water. Despite they are soil bacteria, in the water also they are able to live. So when they reproduce from this A and A will come. From this A, another 2 will come. From this A, another 2 will come. Later from this, another group of organisms has come. Like that, the adopted ones become new species. So they are called A1, not A or A dash. So A dash having a better quality, that is called they are having fittest than this A. If you think these are the B, they will become B. For the clarity in the differentiation, I said A turns into B. So then all B organisms will be produced. So B is more fit compared to the A. But B is evolved from A. This is how, by the isolation of place, this is called geological isolation, reproductive isolation. So new species are formed in the process of phenomenon is called speciation when we change the habitats. This is how new organisms are coming. This is also explained by Charles Darwin. This is branching descent. Who are fit, they will continue the race. Otherwise, they will be eliminated. Understand? So this is how the direct evolutions or indirect evolutions, directionless evolutions, variations, saltations, all these are happened in the natural selection given by the Charles Darwin. That's why Charles Darwin is father of evolution. Even though before Charles Darwin, Lamarck explained all these structures by inheritance theory and use and disuse. Example, what called neck of the giraffe as elongated. Even though so many variations and saltations are given, so with the suitable examples by Darwin. So today I have covered NCERT 7.4 and 7.5. You will have an assignment tomorrow about 10 questions on those two, that is adaptive radiation and biological evolution. I hope you understand. All the best. Bye.